doing? Too quick. So my name's Elena. I think I know everyone here. It's so nice to get the chance to really quickly present this idea that we've all had together as a team, and I've put it to Jamie and Jenny Ponto's involved, and we're just looking to gather heads and try and improve on something that we have to acknowledge is already done incredibly well considering the resources that we have. Starting small, we're just looking at the first case start time for Theatre 4. And every single person is involved in this process and has a voice, and it's really about acknowledging that and working together, if that makes sense. So what we're looking at is basically using a model of quality improvement that I was lucky enough to be trained in a while ago. Anyone could be doing this. It's not so much about the model that we're using, but more about the people involved on the floor. Ideally, we gather as a team, we identify the issues that we see as barriers to starting, like what we all define as on time, and then we come together to kind of build solutions that we're all happy with. So it's not someone from the very top coming down and saying, I'm going to take away this from you and I expect you to produce the same thing or anything like that. This is us together working on the floor at the coalface. And obviously the benefit is significant to each other in terms of our staff morale and actually not being frustrated waiting for someone to turn up or whatever. And very, very briefly, where I'm coming from with all of this is from a background of having done a project as a resident, super keen to get into anaesthesia, and I was lucky enough to be supervised by Jodie Graham, and Twain Russell and a few other important people were involved, and we took a mixed emergency list that was shared by multiple specialties, hence its name, and it was starting an hour late, and it was really frustrating because people were standing around going, where's the patient, this is so, and then they get there and it's the wrong one, and there were just so many issues, and each hospital is different, so it's not about band-aid approaching, taking one solution from a different site and applying it here, but long story short, over what turned out to be about 5 months, we started on time. And it was just amazing, and it was really positive, and it had issues then and they had to be sorted out, but eventually the process was embedded and it continued to work. And it was so positive because it was so simple that we got to present it to the Director General, and he rolled it out across the state. So the whole idea of a gold case started from this project here. And the idea is that you fix in place the night before the first case of the list for whatever theatre it is, and nothing bumps them. The only thing that bumps them is a patient physically already on the table because it's literally life or limb, and then everything else after that can be sorted, but it's clear in everyone's minds, including the patients, that they're first, and then they can be prioritised and they can be picked up on time and delivered on time, and if that makes sense. So that was really positive, and it's kind of a similar idea or principle or whatever with this idea here. So how does this relate to King Edward's? We've got our first case for the theatre list in Theatre 4, and there are start time delays. Does anyone think it's perfect and we don't have any room for improvement? Is everyone happy that this is maybe worthwhile and keen to contribute? Cool. I think what's really important is that there's no one person who's doing something wrong or being obstructive or trying to ruin things. No, it's not about blaming, right? It's often a system error, and it's generally under-resourced or it's evolved over time. Like now we have a huddle, and the huddle is in concrete, and that's great because that's a communication step that improves not just patient safety but also cohesiveness as a team, because you're kind of saying, hey, this is me, you're great, I think we're all friendly and we're going to get along really well today and look after patients together, right? So that's why the huddle's really important. But it's evolved, and so it's been added, and then we can't get the patient through because it's not decided who's first, etc., etc. But there's not just that issue, there's lots of different issues. Jenny and I were in theatre with our team a few weeks ago, and it was like, why is this happening? Why can't we, why do we now go at 8:15 to get the first case when they could have been here for 8:45, like Jamie's emailed around say, I want them there for 8:45. It's like, well, that's great, but as Rob said, you can't just be like, I want them there for 8:45. I was like, which one do I get? Like, they arrive and then they change their mind, and then I'm going back with that patient, and that takes even longer to get the correct patient across. So we were like, how can we do this? Sparks flew. We got a bit excited. I went and saw Jamie. Sparks flew again. Just kidding. And he was interested but a bit sceptical. And then more discussions happened, and I sent him this presentation. He was like, oh, okay, you can give it a go, why not? And so Jenny's super keen to get involved. She's got Heidi involved already, and there's some positive things that are already coming out of it just from the preliminary chat stage. Is anyone familiar with DMAIC and the Lean Six Sigma model? I'm kind of glad, because when I did this project in a couple of years that followed, process mapping, the patient journey, stakeholders, are they words that create any kind of anger response inside of you where you want to hit something? No? It did at the time. It was like done to death, and people were sick of it because there were so many projects, but maybe they weren't always perfectly chosen in terms of their scope, and it was too big, and then the project wasn't successful, and people were like, no, I'm on to you with all this stakeholder stuff and this meeting to get solutions together or get the issues together, and it's pointless. I get really excited and nothing comes of it. So it's almost like that boy who cried wolf thing, but it's really about choosing the project well. So for this particular project, defining the scope would be literally just from the patient arriving to the patient coming to theatre and having knife to skin. That's the scope, and it's just for Theatre 4 to start with. And Jamie's happy to roll it out to the other theatres if we manage to kind of streamline and make it work a little bit better and start a bit more on time for just Theatre 4, right? So that's the scope. We'd basically just, I would do this, we'd do it as a team, map the patient journey in terms of get the steps right, like where do they go first, who then sees them, etc. And often what you find is all these issues start popping up, like 5 people want to see them at once, and there's no order as to who can see them, and then the patient isn't ready on time when we try and go and pick them up, for example. Hey, how are you? So if there's an emergency on the table already in 4, because often it's 2 or 3 overnight, then the whole process is that we eventually decide works once that case is finishing. So we still have the huddle that maybe it's in the anesthetic room, etc., and the patient's still brought through in time to commence after that case is finished. But you raise a really good point, and I guess if it works for this, then it'll be easy for the others. I don't know. I think it's kind of one of the things that stands out as one of the most frustrating with Theatre 4, because you've got 2 anaesthetists almost reliably, and yes, the huddle's important, but one could potentially represent the team. The other one could be beginning so that it's pretty much in and the patient's almost ready by, like, you know, wheels through the door 7:45, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? But yeah, chuck ideas up, chuck issues up. This isn't a one-way, like, I'm not trying to just drown you guys with information. In terms of measuring the delays, TMS has got like start times, right? So we can kind of just pull the data from that to see if there's a delay or not, and then do a before and after just to compare to see how much of an improvement we've made. And then once we've got an appreciable delay, it doesn't even have to be a number of minutes. We'll just agree that there is a delay. We've defined our scope. You know how like someone, do you want to text or call secretly? Mute participant. There we go. I've muted him. I have the power. I just wish I could do that with my kid or my husband. Just like. So once we've kind of worked out this is the process as a team, these are the issues, we're kind of wanting to populate the issues. We don't have to meet as a group to get that issues list. You can throw them towards me or Jenny or anyone else you see as people. We'll kind of need ideally representatives from each of the different groups of people that work together, and including the orderlies and everything, to be pulling ideas, and then we collate them in terms of ideas as in what the issues are, like why is there a delay, why is it happening this time that isn't working, how can we change the order, and does that make sense? So bed management, yeah. But some of that probably is maybe not properly communicating through things that are changing, because bed management have absolutely promised 1 bed for Theatre 4 unequivocally, so we can start the first case. Maybe lately it's getting worse, but Jamie, when I was chatting with Jamie, he said he could think of 2 times where there truly wasn't a bed. And other than that, it was like, well, you know, we need at least 1 successful CSER today. We will make a bed. Don't worry, just crack on with that first case. But you're right, that is one of the biggest issues, especially because it's perceived as a barrier. and maybe it's not properly communicated through to everyone that there will be one bed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we can do a part of it too.
It's also
Yeah.
skill availability with if you have not the first season and potential ASCII patient maybe because ASCII's often
So that's a really good point, and that was something that came out from the Gold case at Charlie's. We actually ended up picking the first case to be plastics who would then probably go home, and it was so simple. It was just bang. They were done by the time you were getting that sick ICU patient through, because it takes so long to go and pick them up and disconnect everything and put them on transport and get them down. But they were often the sickest, so the sickest were being done first. So but that was there, that might not be here, but you can see how actually having the most straightforward, quick Caesar, if one exists, as first is where the list order, but list ordering is really important, that's why Heidi is already involved. But very, very, very good point, and I think that's something to properly address and work out, and it's not permanent, right, the system we're in, like we can't continue to sustain the amount of work that we're doing with the resources that we have. Something will eventually have to give. And if we've got systems in place that work really well, once the system does improve in some way, then that's great because they're kind of transferable across, if that makes sense. So it's still worth it, I think. In terms of getting our issues list, we don't pick all of them because it would take too long, but we pick the low-hanging fruit, the big issues that we think are the big contributors, and we get together as a team again, or we chuck ideas through to key people and we get a list of root causes. So like, why is that actually occurring there at that delay? And then we, as a team, again, we get solutions together. We go, okay, the root cause to that is 3 different doctors try and see the patient and they're still being got ready. So potentially a solution is day surgery are given support to just prioritise that patient from their arrival at 6:30. Day surgery know that patient has to be ready by 7:15. Staff going to review said patient do not go there till 7:15, that kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's just one patient that it's got to be clear on, not all walking through in the morning. And I know one of the other issues was day surgery was opening at 7, and it was like, how on earth is that even possible? It's now staffed from 6:30, so,
I think it's still a trial period, isn't it? Or did that trial finish and they are definitely 6:30 now? I thought it was a trial. Yeah.
If it is truly a trial, this would be a good example of something to do now, because then we show them how important that half hour is. Yeah, potentially. And then in terms of implementing solutions, we kind of roll it out together as a team. We make sure it's all really well communicated and everyone knows why we're doing it and what the new process is. And expect issues, expect problems, expect delays, expect that heart-set moment where you're like, God, we worked so hard and now it's really like it. But it does happen and it does get better because you've kind of created a team of people who are on the same page and motivated together, and you troubleshoot, right? And you find, and it might just be one key thing that's a huge obstruction, and then you take that to Jamie and Jody and people up above and say, we cannot improve things without, resourcing this one thing, say, for example. And it's nice because you get to think outside the box a bit as well. So we've already touched a little bit about what the delays are. There's lots of bottlenecks, etc. I won't go into it. Does anyone not recognise where this is from? I was thinking about, yeah. I was like, how old am I? When you start to pull movie slides and people are like, what movie is that from? And you're like, oh my God, I'm late. So just acknowledging that we all want the same thing. We all want to work together. We all love working together, generally speaking, and that this is really about doing that. And there is great potential for positivity. That's right. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that we've got to start on time. It would be ironic if I ran late, so we will finish up very, very soon. We're almost done. I've kind of covered this already. It's about gathering minds together and following a process and coming up with an outcome. And I know it sounds a little bit optimistic, and I'm known for being a little bit too oh, the world is like all perfect and we're all just like great and going to get along. But already Heidi, head of like surgery, right, is looking at the order of the list for Theatre 4 and herself fixing the first case. So already Jenny took to Heidi. She was like, this is really needs improvement. The techs don't even know who to collect. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time. No worries.